If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you if that happens. Oh, I just checked that. Should we watch it? Yeah, well, thank you, Kath. Thank you. That's a good point. Telling them what to happen when they enter the fire, it's if we're all running and they're burning, it's not a good look, is it? People watching. Good evening and welcome everyone to Planning Committee. Before we start the meeting, I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. First of all, there are no planned fire alarms today. If you do hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. There is a refreshment machine over there for use by members of the public in the waiting area outside this room. Finally, please switch your mobile phones to silent whilst in the meeting room. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Members of the public are welcome to film, audio record, photograph or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. I'd like to ask that you please be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. If you are filming the meeting, please do not film the audience, only the front table. The code for accessing the Council's Wi-Fi is capital F, little r, 33, capital W, little I, little f, little I, exclamation mark. During the meeting, members of the committee will not have access to the internet except as it relates to the official business of this meeting. Send or receive emails, texts, messages or tweets concerning the business of the committee. Have we received any apologies? I don't believe we have. So I think we are all here. Confirmation of voting members. Please will the voting members of the committee indicate by raising their hands. Thank you. Notification of any items of business which the Chair deems urgent. You will have in front of you the Addendum Report and the members' pack of the presentations that we're going to go through. Disclosures of interests and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at this meeting? I am just going to raise the fact that I am Ward Councillor for the first development control item that we're looking at, but I have not expressed an opinion of that, and I'm keeping an open mind for that item on the agenda. Minutes of the previous meeting. So these were the meetings that are held on the 9th of March, the 21st of March and 21st of May 2022. Does the committee agree with those three sets of minutes for those people that can recall them that were here? Agreed. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Southwark Planning Code of Practice and Guillotine Rule adoption. Now, we had a discussion at the briefing on Monday about this item, and we felt we needed further discussion between members and officers before we took this forward. But I'd just like to see formally, are we agreed to defer this item? Agreed. Thank you. That brings us to development management. The next item of business concerns the determination of planning applications. I'd like to remind everyone of the committee that the guidance on the conduct of business. So officers will present the report, outline the recommendations and answer questions raised by the committee. If present and wishing to speak, the following may address the committee for no more than 3 minutes each. Firstly, a spokesperson representing any objectors to the application. By now, if there are any objectors, they will identify a single spokesperson. If there's more than one objector wishing to speak, we'll divide the time up within that 3 minutes that are permitted. Secondly, the applicant or the applicant's agent. Third, a spokesperson representing any supporters of the application who live within 100 metres of a development site. Finally, a ward councillor representing the area affected by the proposal. Ward members in attendance and those nominated to speak on behalf of objectors, supporters and applicants should sit in the front row of the public gallery. That's so that it's easier for communication between the committee and the speaker. In case any issues need to be clarified later in proceedings as well, it's not an opportunity to take part in the debate of the committee. That is only open to members of the committee. Each speaker should restrict their comments to planning aspects of the proposal and should avoid repeating information which has already been presented in the report. The meeting is not a hearing where all participants present evidence to be examined by other participants. At the end of each representation, the committee may ask questions of the presenter. Speakers should lead the committee to subjects they would welcome any further questioning on when they give their presentation. After receiving all submissions, the committee will debate the application and consider the recommendation. This is a council committee meeting which is open to the public and there should be no interruptions from the audience. Finally, I'd like everyone present to know that although the planning committee comprises members of different political parties, nobody at this meeting is politically whipped. Our decisions are made in accordance with the council's planning policy and based on the information contained within the relevant reports, together with consultation responses and any verbal submissions made today. How we approach these applications set out in the Development Management Report at item 5 in the agenda, and if members are happy to note the report, we'll move on to considering the planning applications. Are members happy that we proceed? Thank you. That brings us to item 7.1, Ledbury Estate, Commercial Way and Old Kent Road. And I'd like to hand over to Lau Wing to present the report. By the way, we have 2 very lengthy presentations here. You would have seen that pack. So I've given guidance to officers to try and get through these as quickly as possible because there's quite a lot of information there. So we need time to absorb it, but not to get bogged down in the detail. But over to you, Lau.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, I'd like to draw members' attention to the Addendum Report. So there is an update on the tree contribution following further information provided by the applicant and also further discussions with our tree officer. There is also a section in that addendum that updates members on the equality impact assessment. So the GLA had made some comments on the submitted EQIA and mentioned that there should be more details provided. And the applicant has, however, been doing their own equalities impact assessment as part of their consultation process. And the most recent assessment they did was carried out in December 2021. So that it provides more detail and provides data of on the various groups with protected characteristics. And it's worth noting that the applicant has been working on establishing the mitigation measures and monitoring, and these will be finalised at the time. These are being finalised at the time of writing. What I wanted to point out was that the committee report had commented that there is a large number of existing black and ethnic minority ethnic businesses in the local area which would not be directly affected by the proposed development. But it should also be highlighted that the strategic housing market assessment prepared on behalf of a number of South East London boroughs states that Southwark, together with Lewisham, has the most ethnically mixed population in the South East London sub-region. And so compared to the population, at large, a very high proportion of black households are housed in a social affordable rented sector. So these groups would therefore stand to benefit from the proposed affordable housing, which would include these social rented units. And those with a right to return will not have to participate in the bidding process. And regarding the additional homes, all residents registered on the housing list will have equal access to bidding for a home, and which is based on the council's local letting process. And that'll be carried out in accordance with the council's published allocation scheme, which is already subject to its own community impact assessment and equality analysis. So it's thought that this protected characteristic, specifically race, would not be disadvantaged in the bidding of those 51 homes. I would also like to point out, and that's not in the addendum, apologies, that in paragraph 108 of the committee report, it states that there is an early review mechanism that would be secured by the unilateral undertaking, since the development would not substantially commence within 24 months. And that needs to be corrected, and that should say that development is due to commence in autumn 2022, so this autumn, and the need for an early stage viability review would only apply if development was not started within this 24 months of decision. I would also like to point out that we have received a late statement from the Ledbury Residents Project Group. They were due to attend tonight's committee, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they are not able to, but they are watching it live on YouTube. And we have a copy of that letter. We have not been able to print it, but the summary is in the Addendum Report, and they just reiterate their support for the scheme, and they have emphasised their strong involvement of throughout the whole process, from design and there's been a lot of consultation engagement with the local residents. If we can try to print out that letter for members, but they had planned to read that statement out to members tonight. So I'll now just go on to the presentation itself. So the proposals involve the redevelopment of two sites on the Ledbury estate, known as the Old Kent Road and Bromyard site. So that includes the demolition of Bromyard House, Skenfirth House, Sarsfield House and Peter Church House. So all of these tower blocks have been identified to have serious structural and fire safety issues. And in October 2020, a consultation was held with residents to determine options for preferred routes for the redevelopment of the estate. And that option was taken forward to a resident ballot in March 2021, and with a majority voting to proceed with the demolition and replacement option. So there'll be the erection of 6 blocks ranging in height from 5 to 22 stories, and that would provide 340 new homes, including 224 replacement homes, and there also a provision of Class E floor space, so that's non-residential floor space, fronting Old Kent Road at ground floor level, and there'll also be a provision of a new estate road, associated car parking and cycle parking, as well as a new tenants resident TRA hall and a Muga, and associated open space and landscaping. So this is just showing you the site allocation. The site is split into 2 parts. We have the Bromyard site, which is site A to the south, and we have the Old Kent Road site, site B. They are both in council ownership. And the main Old Kent Road site has Old Kent Road to the north, and then Birding Bush Road and Camelot Primary School to the west, and then we have Commercial Way running south. And then Bromyard site is just located a few hundred metres southwest along Commercial Way. And as you can see here from the aerial image of the existing site, the Old Kent Road includes 3 of the 4 existing towers. We've got Sarsfield House, Skenfirth House and Peter Church House. And then Bromyard site to the south contains the 4th tower block known as Bromyard House. And here's just some existing site photographs. They are 14-storey tower blocks. They are largely large panel system construction. And then we have the existing games area in the centre of the Old Kent Road site, and existing TRA hall fronting Old Kent Road. So in terms of policy designations, the site is within the Old Kent Road opportunity area, and the Old Kent Road site is within the action area core, and the Bromyard site sits just outside but is in the urban density zone. And the majority of the site is not within the conservation area, but there is a small proportion where it overlaps in the Kentish Drovers and Birding Bush conservation area. And the site does not contain any listed buildings, but Commercial Way, running south, forms the southern boundary, and that comprises 2 to 3 story terrace housing and a number of villas, and there are also associated listed buildings there. And then we have the Kentish Drover pub at the corner of Old Kent Road, or Commercial Way and Old Kent Road, and we've got more notable heritage assets such as the gasworks, gas holders, is Grade 2 listed, as well as the Livesey Museum. And there's also the Livesey Conservation Area to the north and Caroline Gardens Conservation Area to the south. There are other constraints on the site. We've got the Bakerloo Line extension tunnels that's been safeguarded by the Secretary of State, and that creates a no-pile zone across a majority of the Old Kent Road site, as you can see outlined in blue. And this slide just shows the indicative locations of those running tunnels, and that, because of these tunnels, that has influenced the location and height of those the buildings. So this just shows you the proposed massing. So on the old site, we've got the 2 new 6-storey buildings fronting Old Kent Road and also Commercial Way. And then we have the taller building of 22 storeys that's set back within the site behind that new frontage. And all of these 3 blocks would house the social rented accommodation. And then a 4th block would house these market sale units that's housed in an 8-storey building. And then on the Bromyard site, we have a Part 5, Part 14-storey on fronting Commercial Way, and then a 6-storey building housing the private units. So just a brief overview of the scheme. We have 340 new homes, but that includes 224 replacement homes and 116 additional homes. So in terms of the affordable offer, we have 76.4% across the whole site, calculated in terms of habitable rooms. And looking just at the uplift, we have 50.5% uplift. And there would also be a replacement Muga and a TRA hall. There will also be extensive open space and children's play area, and the site achieves an on-site carbon emission savings of 89.1%, which is considered to be excellent. And the scheme also provides policy-compliant housing mix and unit sizes, and also provides a minimum number of cycle parking and accessible parking. There would be the loss of 1 Category A tree, but there would also be significant planting of new trees on the site, which I'll explain later. So this just shows you the aerial image of how the blocks will be arranged. As you can see, the areas shaded in orange are those blocks that house the social rented accommodation, and then those the 2 blocks, A1 and B1, would be the private units. We have the new Southwark Plan Policy P17, which deals with tall buildings, and it's identified that this site could be suitable for tall buildings. And also in the Old Kent Road AAP, we have the tall building strategy, where you have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, where it marks, Tier 1 being buildings over 20 stories. That marks a site with significance that might be close to, such as the BLE underground station, or areas with great accessibility. And then Tier 3 being buildings of up to 15 stories that mark our local markers. So those buildings, the 2 tall buildings, 14-storey and the 22 stories, would be marking those locations. So you have to bear in mind that the site does contain existing 14-storey tower blocks, and the proposal would then sit comfortably in the existing and emerging context in the massing and design terms, including those consented schemes on the Old Kent Road opportunity area. The proposal would appear slightly more noticeable in the skyline, but then the improved aesthetic appearance of those buildings would make a positive contribution to the townscapes. The vehicles would only be able to access the Old Kent Road site from Birding Bush Road via a new estate road proposed within the Old Kent Road site, and that would run one way northbound and connects to Pencrake Way. So it's just an image of the massing. So that Bromyard site contains 3 blocks, but they are all connected by a single-storey addition. We have the central block, 5 stories, which contains those duplex masonettes, and then we have the 6-storey and 14-storey buildings that bookends that central block. And the tallest of that bookend will then be seen as a transition towards the Old Kent Road site. This is just an illustrative ground floor plan. So residential entrances are located either end of the plot, as well as centrally, to provide access to those duplex units, and that maximises visibility and public realm activity. I wanted to say that the quality of the proposed accommodation across the whole site is considered to be excellent. It meets or exceeds those minimum space standards, and it provides 83.5% dual aspect accommodation, and those units where they are single aspect will have no north-facing homes, and all of the 2 to 3 bedrooms would have dual aspect. And there would also be good internal daylight levels, and units have been designed to ensure that there would not be any direct overlooking. And then we have the massing for the Old Kent Road site, and that consists of those 2 6-storey buildings and then the 22-storey tower block. And the 6-storey buildings on the blocks on the Old Kent Road frontage have been influenced by those running tunnels beneath, and that limits those height to 6 stories on the northeast of the site for engineering reasons. And in addition, this 6-storey block facing Commercial Way has been designed to limit its impact on the adjoining Kentish Drovers and Burning Bush conservation area. So the proposed 22 building is actually located in a more sensitive location, so it doesn't impact on the conservation area. And then just an illustrative ground floor plan here. You've got the communal courtyard providing a separation to those external street network. Residential entrances are located along the street-facing edges of the blocks and inside the courtyard, and it has planted defensible spaces around those ground floor private entrances. So in urban design terms, the proposed layout is considered to be positively responding to the local context and enhances the streetscape, and it reflects the historical building lines. And there's also going to be subsequent improvements to the public realm facilities and connection between green spaces. And in terms of impact on the existing neighbours, the applicant has carried out daylight and sunlight analysis, and the results demonstrate that the proposed development would achieve very high level of compliance with the BRE guidance, and the proposed design would provide existing occupiers with adequate levels of natural light and sunlight, and also there would not be any significant overlooking. So this is just a housing mix. As you can see, it would re-provide those 209 social rented homes. It would also re-provide the 15 shared equity homes, and then provide an additional 51 social rented flats and 65 additional market homes. There is a policy requirement where for a minimum number of family dwellings, that's 3 bedrooms and above, and this scheme exceeds that policy requirement. So these are just some views of the scheme. This is looking on the old Valmar site, looking north from Commercial Way. And then you've got a view of the masonettes from Commercial Way. As you can see, they're connected by these single-storey additions, which provides a break within the massing as well. And this is just a wider view of that Bromyard site block. This is just a view of the Bromyard Tower from Burden Bush Park. As you can see, the predominant material is brick. There'll be a varied palette of brick, but there will be use of precast concrete lintels and copings to add to articulation of the facades. There is strong verticality in the design because of the structural grid, and then also the inclusion of those corner winter gardens. You've got the view of Old Kent Road site looking from Commercial Way. You can see some of the articulations and how the rhythm of those buildings might integrates well with the properties on the Commercial Way as well. And then you've got a view of the Old Kent Road site from the New Estate Road. And you can see that those units overlook both the road and the courtyard, so it provides that passive surveillance. And then you've got the Old Kent Road site looking from Old Kent Road itself. And these blocks would house there will be 2 commercial units on the ground floor fronting Old Kent Road, so it provides that active frontage. I was going to say on the Bromyard site there are no changes to the existing highway servicing or access, but on the Old Kent Road site there will be a new one-way estate road running from Commercial Way through to Pencrake Way. That will be one way only, and so some of the wider benefits that it would allow pedestrian and cyclist access to the Camelot Primary School. And there'll be the design of the curb-free pedestrian space also prioritises pedestrian cycling. So those vehicles who have access are usually just for servicing and delivery, refuse, and also for the disabled parking bays. And there will be the design of the surface treatment has been designed to ensure that there'll be low speed, and there'll also be signs around the site to ensure that it's at 5 miles per hour along that route. This is just a view looking into the Commonwealth courtyard from Pencrake Way, and then just a view of looking at the Old Kent Road Tower from Pencrake Way. So the site is close to a number of heritage assets and also within one of the protected strategic views. So assessment of the development on the setting of the local heritage assets has been carried out, and those are set out in the report. And in summary, it is considered that the proposed high architectural quality and urban form of the development is considered to enhance the townscape setting, whilst reinstating the historic urban street line, and that responds to the finer grained dwellings in the locality. So some of the proposed frontage along Commercial Way references connotations of the 19th century character. The report notes that Historic England had made in the consultation response that there should be a greater consideration of the impact on Caroline Gardens. So the applicant has provided additional views and additional wire lines to show how what that impact could be. So this image just shows a wire line overlaid onto the current view with the existing retained in the image, and that shows how the proposed building would appear marginally taller within the background of those asylum building ranges, and it remains to one side of the chapel building, reaching as high as the lower portion of the cupola. So while it's acknowledged that the visual prominence of that proposed building would increase, you have to judge that against the existing the baseline condition. The Bromyard house is actually currently in a poor condition, poor quality architecture. So whilst there is a slight increase of ability to see the new building, it makes no change to the ability to read the asylum buildings as a complete and contained design of the early 19th century. So therefore, the character and appearance of the conservation areas of Caroline Gardens, Livesey Conservation Area, as well as Kentish Drovers and Burden Bush Conservation Area is considered to be maintained. So as I was saying earlier, there are 45 trees on or adjacent to the site. And 37 trees are proposed for removal to facilitate the development, including one Category A tree, so that's a Norway maple, that's located on the Old Kent Road site. And the proposed ground levels would need to be reduced to meet street levels, and therefore the base of the tree sits higher than the proposed levels, and a significant amount of that root protection area would have to be removed. So it does mean removal of that Category A tree. And furthermore, the tree's proximity to those proposed buildings means that there might be a reduction in the natural light into those new homes. And officers are happy to support the scheme as an exceptional case because for the loss of that Category A tree because of the public benefits of the scheme. There's also going to be significant replacement tree planting of approximately 166 trees on the site, and it provides an increase in the replacement tree strategy provides an increase in tree girth compared with the removals proposed, and as a result an increase in canopy will be achieved across the site. And as I said in the addendum, there is a change to the tree contribution to £112,000, and that be secured by a unilateral undertaking. We have a replacement TRA hall in block B4, so that's in the taller 22-storey tower, and that's located centrally. and that will be expected to be used for a range of activities and events. And there's also an additional TRA amenity space on the roof level. And in terms of fire safety, the applicant has prepared a fire safety statement, which was revised during the course of the application to address compliance with the London plan policies. And for the 22-storey tower, 3 lifts are proposed and 2 evacuation lifts and a firefighting lift. The Health and Safety Executive has reviewed the application and considers that the information provided is satisfactory and has not made any objections to this. Just a brief look on the common amenity space and children play space. So all of those 340 proposed flats would have a private amenity space in the form of balconies. So all of the family dwellings would have at least 10 square metres of balcony space, which meets the policy requirement. And the 1-bed and 2-bed flats would be provided with 5 or 7 square metres of balcony space, but they are all in the private tenure. So there is a slight shortfall in the private amenity space, so that gets added to the communal amenity space. But the applicant has provided that within the site, so that meets policy requirements. There's also a requirement for play space. There's a requirement for 3,197 of square metres of play space across the 2 sites, and the applicant has proposed a scheme where it exceeds that by proposing 3,372 square metres. And then in line with policy P15 in Old Kent Road, there is a requirement for 5 square metres of public open space per dwelling, and the applicant has also exceeded that requirement. And the applicant has identified some of those existing structures that could be reused for some of the play areas. So these are just images of how that could be reused. And then just on car parking, the proposed development would be car-free, except for 10 blue badge parking spaces. So it'd be 8 on the Old Kent Road site and 2 on Bromyard site. And that equates to 3% of the total proposed units, and that complies with London Plan policy. So all of those disabled car parking spaces would have active electric vehicle charging provision as well. There will also be a car club bay, which will be location to be agreed, and the applicant has agreed that they will provide 3 years of free car club membership to the local to the residents. So the Old Kent Road is located within an existing controlled parking zone, CPZ, but the streets to the south of Commercial Way and east of Commercial Way are not within a controlled parking zone. So the Bromyard site is actually located outside of that CPZ. So to ensure that the proposed development does not increase car dominance, there is a plan to extend that CPZ, and that consultation of that CPZ is going to be carried out this summer, and a live date being April 2023. So those existing residents who had previously had access to parking on street will be able to apply for those a permit for the CPZ. But for new residents moving into the scheme, we will not be eligible to apply for a car parking permit in the new CPZ. And there will also be Section 278 agreement to secure the highway works. And I would just like to highlight that those Section 278 works that's been requested by TfL and that's listed in the committee report are not agreed at this moment in time, so it does not form part of the resolution to grant. And just quickly on energy and sustainability, so 89.1% carbon saving emissions would be achieved through connection to the district heating networks, CELCHIP, and also PV panels. It falls slightly short of the local plan target of 100% emission reduction against building regs, but that will be offset via a carbon offset payment. But 89% is considered to be excellent. There will also be increase in the urban greening factor of 0.41, and that meets the minimum of 0.4. That's the target set out in the London Plan. And there will also be biodiversity net gain. There will also be sustainable urban drainage in the form of rain gardens, and that would also increase habitats for wildlife. Just wanted to emphasise that throughout the programme, the design team have worked collaboratively with the local community, and they have formed the consultation strategy alongside Open Communities, which is an independent residents advisor, and the Ledbury housing team. So there has been extensive engagement and consultation that's been carried out by the resident project group, the Camelot Primary School, ward councillors, GLA, TfL, and the design review panel. And there has been public exhibitions as well as workshops throughout. They have also been engaged directly with the community at each of the RIBA stages. And updates have also been provided on the digital commonplace platform, and the plans and scale models are displayed in the existing TRA hall. So there's been a strong ownership of, residents have really strong ownership in the design of the whole process, and it's expected that those kind of engagement will continue post-committee through to detailed design stages. So finally, just to emphasise the benefits of the scheme, there'll be a provision of 340 very high quality homes with a good offer of 76.4% of affordable housing, and all of the private, communal and public open space will be let on site, and it meets the housing mix unit sizes and provides the minimum 10% of wheelchair housing on site. It provides excellent standard accommodation with 83.5% dual aspect, and having their own private meter space for the family dwellings. It will be a tenure blind design, so you can't distinguish between the different tenures, and you replaces the Muga and TRA hall, and again a very excellent carbon emission reduction, and the scheme has been involved the residents throughout the whole process. So that's my end of my presentation.
Thank you. Very thorough presentation, so thank you for that. Are there any points of clarification that any members of the committee wishes to raise? Councillor Soanes.
Thank you, Councillor Livingston, and thank you, Wynne. Just picking up on your sort of closing remarks regarding community consultation, I think I would agree with you. I was particularly impressed with the decant strategy and the detail and the sensitivity to existing residents in those plans. So sort of I applaud the team, and I think that would be sort of certainly a lesson to be learned for future projects. I know you commented on the Historic England's comments on the lack of detail, and I know that you mentioned that the applicants have revised that, and then you commented on the response to that. Was that your comments, and or were those designs, updated designs and representations, were they shared with Historic England for commentary? Please.
They have not been shared with the Historic England for commentary.
So you've made the officers have made a judgment.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And why is that?
Thank you, Chair. Historic England didn't object to the proposal, so they just felt that the application lacked additional detail and could benefit from further detail. The further detail was provided and is before you tonight. And the point, and in making a recommendation today, we've taken very great care to look at the images that are in your report and in the pack, actually, which shows the wire line of the it's principally the Bromyard site, which has the 14-storey block, which is it in a similar location to the existing Bromyard Tower, and the same 14 stories in height, but because of the new sort of housing standards and requirements, the 14 stories in the modern context is slightly taller than 14 stories in the 1960s and 70s when the Bromyard towers were built. They floor-to-floor heights are slightly bigger and more generous to meet current standards, and so the same number of stories means the building is slightly taller. So what the conclusion and the recommendation before you today is that the setting of the conservation area is unaffected, because there is a tower there that's visible from within the conservation area, and there will be a new tower that will be visible in much the same place, slightly taller, but to a much better and much higher quality design. So the conclusion is, given the high quality design and the fact that it is, of a similar impact on the conservation area, it is acceptable, and would therefore be an acceptable proposal. As I said, Historic England didn't object at the time. They just felt that the application could benefit from some further clarification, and that clarification was provided by the applicants, and we're satisfied to make a recommendation on the basis of that clarification.
Righto. Thank you, Michael, for that. And I was obviously particularly impressed by the high percentage of dual aspect units. You mentioned that those units which are single aspect, are they spread across the tenure mix, or I couldn't actually see a breakdown of which tenure would actually be affected by that. Are you able to tell us, please?
I do not have that accommodation schedule in front of me, or to confirm whether it's spread across the tenures. But the applicant and the architects perhaps could. And I wanted to say that those homes that do have single aspect are not solely north-facing.
Pardon?
Those units that have single aspect are not solely north-facing.
Okay.
Okay, so that sounds like a question we should be saving for the applicant and ask again. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two tree-related questions. I'm not sure who I should ask about trees. Of course, it's fairly standard practice to offset removing a tree by planting saplings. Anecdotally, I've had a sense of people noticing a lot of saplings dying, presumably because they haven't been watered or for whatever lack of care. So two related questions. Do we track how many of our trees that we've planted 1 year later are still alive? And what policies do we have in place to ensure that these particular trees will be alive 1 year after they've been planted, and many years beyond that?
Thank you, Chair. I can take that. Yes, indeed, in all of our applications, but what we've written into the conditions with this application before you is that we have a 5-year maintenance and monitoring brief on the trees. Secondly, it's not saplings that are being re-provided here. We have our condition requires a certain girth of tree to be installed to replicate the quantum is worked out on the basis of the trunk size of the trees that are being removed, and the replacement trees have to replace that girth. There's a girth criterion for the replacement tree. So what we'll get here is almost semi-mature trees. They are large girth-sized trees, and they're 166. Forgive me. Trees that will replace the trees that are removed on the site. Beyond that, there is the caveat payment, which picks up any shortfall of the canopy cover, which is being lost as a consequence of the trees being removed, and that is a payment which will go towards tree planting off-site in the nearby area, which will complete that. The expectation is that the trees that are replaced, that the new trees are all planted on the site, and they're all of very high quality. And potential, there could be we would be looking to almost place protection orders on them to make sure that they have a longevity and will be replaced if they themselves don't survive into the longer term. But they are designed from the ground up to make sure that they have adequate soil to survive and so on, and qualities to survive. And then also, as I said, there'll be a 5-year monitoring to make sure that they survive at least to 5 years and beyond.
Could I add to that? And so just to emphasise, reiterate what Michael said, in paragraph 222 of the committee report, we do say that there will be planting of large trees, and it will also specify those girth size of those trees. And then condition 10 is where we specify the 5-year monitoring period.
And sorry, just so I'm clear, is there an expectation that greater girth leads to greater likelihood of longevity, that they're more likely to survive, basically?
Indeed, once they've survived beyond 5 years, you'd anticipate that a tree has rooted and will carry on. In fact, in the tree, in the landscape plan, there is a sort of dotted outline of the projected canopy cover that they will grow to, and the projection is a 25-year projection. So it shows that there is an anticipation that not only they will survive beyond 5 years, but that they will grow and that they will contribute positively to the canopy cover for this area for the longer term.
Councillor Papula.
Thank you, Chair. So on point 362, it's noted that that monies will of course be payable to Transport for London for additional bus services. I would like clarification as to whether that's down to existing bus services or a mitigation of bus services due to the proposed cuts thrown out by Transport for London in their paper published last week. I would just like clarification as to whether communication to Transport for London has been had with regards to that.
I think Colin wants to take that. Thank you.
Yes. So the unilateral undertaking contributions are made to us as the planning authority. So we're the collecting authority for those contributions, and in other schemes we'd be the collecting authority for the Section 106 contributions. What we've made clear to TfL is that whilst we're very happy to collect that money, we'd like to spend it on additional bus services to support the growth in population in the Old Kent Road, and we wouldn't, as officers, be happy to spend it on offsetting cuts to services. And of course, whenever we spend, or wherever it's proposed to spend more than £100,000 of Section 106 or unilateral undertaking monies, that has to come back to committee for committee to agree that. So we would anticipate that you, as the planning committee, would not support us kind of offsetting TfL's current problems, and certainly that's not our intention. And we made that very clear to TfL colleagues.
So, good news. Excellent question. Any further questions? Okay, in that case, we will move on to any objectors that we have in the audience. So we haven't heard beforehand of anybody that wishes to object. Is there anybody that wishes to come forward? Yeah, please come forward. Come take to the seat and the microphone there. And so we'll give you 3 minutes. So we'll ask you to introduce yourself first, give your name and address, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to speak. The button on the right-hand side there is what enables you to speak, but you've got it on, so that's all fine. So over to you. If you give your name and address first, and then we'll start the 3 minutes.
My name is Lucy O, and my neighbours are all listening online, so I'm here with their blessing. A number of us did submit objections in relation to the transport assessment that was submitted alongside the planning application. I think the headline to us was this message, commercial way feels safe, Right, okay. Commercial Way doesn't feel safe, and for the last 2 years, a group of us have been communicating regularly with councillors on the large numbers of accidents and road rage incidents that we have to endure every day living there. We've also been in touch with Pip Howden from Highways, sending videos of ambulances getting stuck, cars overturned, people sobbing on the side of the road. We've got it all documented. I think our worst fear is that when this transport assessment went through, that it wouldn't recognise existing problems and that they would be compounded by the increased traffic on the road. Not just the traffic during the works, but also there will be increased car journeys. And I find it slightly odd to think that there will be only a few hundred extra car journeys from, perhaps 1,000 residents coming back to the street. They may not own cars, but there will be other journeys in cars. And one of the reasons for this problem is that it's a commercial way. It used to be called Cottage Grove. It's a small, narrow residential street. But unfortunately, because of the way in which roads are set up surrounding it, large lorries and other vehicles going to the dump go down Commercial Way. So we have huge numbers of very heavy vehicles already. There's a children's park just opposite where we live in Burnbush Park. There's a school, Camelot Primary School. There's no safe place to cross the road. It's really quite scary. I have a 5-year-old daughter. It's quite scary to cross the road. I'm also a cyclist. I find it quite unnerving. And one of the problems is that heavy vehicles come down there and then they want to turn right across Commercial Way. And there's no traffic lights, unlike Asylum Road and Peckham Park Road. So we get the traffic backed up, and then we get motorbikes driving down the pavement at speed. And then when the traffic clears, you get cars driving at speed. So we've got this existing problem, and then there's going to be all this transport, the vehicles bringing materials to the sites, and then inevitably increased traffic for the residents. And we really just want to make sure that we don't compound the problems that we're already experiencing. And I suppose we felt that it was really, just to finish, that was, for me, what was really, in the response that I've seen that was circulated before this meeting, we made a comment about the Bromyard House site not having any off-site access. And the point in the document, it just said, well, Bromyard House doesn't currently have any off-site access, so that's fine. So what's not fine is already very congested around there. Nobody lives in Bromyard House right now. And it seems like a really low level of ambition, I have to say. Can we not make it better on Commercial Way with this new development? None of us are opposed to the site being redeveloped, of course we're not. But it could make life really quite even more difficult and more dangerous unless something's done about the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy, do you want to stay there in case there's any questions? So thank you. But yeah, thank you for your presentation. Councillor Leeming.
Thank you very much for coming and saying that. I'm just interested, when you say more ambitious and make it better, what would that look like for you?
Certainly, I think the issue about not having any off-site delivery space for Bromyard House is significant. If you think about Ubers and taxis and Deliveroos and waste vehicles coming, I mean, they're just going to sit in the road, and the road's narrow there. So that's one thing. It's like, can we think about how to make things better? I mean, doing something about the junction on the Old Kent Road. So in the transport assessment, there's a map with little dots with serious accidents. And there was a little dot right on the corner of Old Kent Road and Commercial Way. And the transport assessment talked about the little dots down in Peckham Rye, not about that little dot right next to the development. So there's something needs to be done about that junction, which is extremely dangerous. We went there with Pip Howden, we stood on the corner of that junction, and while we were there, my neighbour counted the number of people making illegal right turns onto the Commercial Way. It's just happening all the time. And we've been raising this, and then there's the response we get back is, oh, you're going to have controlled parking, which will alleviate some of the difficulties cars passing each other. But we know that the number of residents who will return will have the right to park on the street. So it might be better for a little while, but it's not going to be better for much longer. And I guess it's the thing about the wrong type of traffic coming down the street. So the council commissioned a report from Conway a few years ago, and it basically said, well, you've got these heavy vehicles coming down Commercial Way, and it's not appropriate. It actually says that in your report. They need to be routed in a better way. I mean, you're going to have families going back, right, with children. They're going to be crossing the road to go to the school and the park, and you've got, I don't know how many bin lorries coming down the road, and also vans taking junk to be recycled. So those are some of the things. I mean, we've put it all down in emails to the councillors. We've had these consultations with Highways, and we can't get back with, well, you can have some yellow lines and some speed bumps and controlled parking. But it's really like, well, why is Commercial Way being used as a rat run for the dump? It's just not appropriate. So I guess that's one of the things we'd like to see, that be a little bit more ambitious.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Thank you, and thank you very much for coming along to talk to us today. Thank you. That brings us on to the applicants. So is the applicant or the applicant's agent present? Could you come forward, please, to the front table? And if you could introduce yourself, and then I'll give you 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, members. My name's Tim Gaskell. I'm from CMA Planning. I'm the agent for the application, and I'm here with our architect, Dan Buckley from Karakusevich Carson, and a number of the council's project officers, including Patricia Lewin, who are behind me. We'll be very happy to answer any queries you have. I obviously just wanted to sort of say a few words about the scheme, but perhaps just to start by picking up some of the comments from the previous speaker. I think you all have heard from the introduction from the officers that we've been having sort of discussions with TfL about the extent of 278 works on Old Kent Road itself, and those are still ongoing discussions. However, what is agreed is the extent of 278 works that we've agreed with the borough. And you'll see in your committee report on page 97, I think it should be, the section 106 heads of terms. And in there's the 278 works which have been detailed. They are still heads of terms, but you'll see there's a number of measures which, I suppose for want of a better phrase, I'd sort of say would be traffic calming type measures. Is it 98 on your page or 74? I'm not quite sure. My committee report has 2 numbers. There's a whole series of measures there, including improving pedestrian crossing facilities on Bird in the Bush Road, including the crossing facilities on Commercial Way, removing redundant crossovers, improving lighting, adding in new trees, pits, landscaping, road markings. So there's a lot of measures and road and sort of work there that we are looking at doing and would be doing as part of this development. Those haven't been sort of drawn up and detailed. That would normally come during the next stage of the development, but hopefully they would go some way to address some of the concerns you've just heard. Jumping back to the application itself, obviously you've heard 340 new homes. Very pleased to be able to say 76% of those are social rent. They're obviously replacing existing homes, but even on the uplift, 50% of those are affordable as well. Clearly that will help to meet the needs of the 16,000 households on the housing waiting list. 10% of the homes would be accessible. The majority of those would be focused on the social rented tenure as well, where there is the area of greatest need. You've heard about the landlord offer, and that's something that the team worked very hard with the local residents on the estate and the community groups. Part of that process has seen them very heavily involved in the design of the scheme, including the selection of the architects and really getting into the detail of the homes themselves. As a result of their helpful involvement, the homes would be of an excellent standard, generally significantly exceeding the minimum space standards, 83% dual aspect. There are no more than 6 flats per core. All the homes would have a kitchen window, some very positive features there. There would be a new TRA hall, along with commercial units. The new hall would be 20% bigger with more active frontages and spill-out space. The commercial unit would provide frontages onto Old Kent Road and jobs and services to local community. In terms of the landscaping, we've talked about the trees, but I think we'd emphasise that at present the spaces around the existing tower blocks are mostly just sort of open grass, concrete spaces. The new landscaping will see the Muga re-provided, but also a wide range of different spaces to provide a significant increase in play provision for children of all ages, and also just for the community in general. So whether they're places to play, to sit, to enjoy, this would be something for everybody within the estate. I think in conclusion, I think we'd say this is an exciting opportunity. I think we've been very pleased to work on this project, and really hope you can support that this evening. And as I say, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. That was about 3 minutes on the dot. So thank you for that. Any questions from the committee to the
Was there one about the tenure of the dual aspect units?
Yes.
Good. I hoped you asked that because I've been doing the numbers while frantically doing the numbers there. So obviously 83% of the homes are dual aspect, which is a sort of a good number by any measure. That does mean there are single aspect, but none of those are north facing. Of those single aspect homes, 16 are private sale, and 38 of them are social rent. So there are more single aspect homes which are social rent than market sale. There's 2 points I'd add on to that. I mean, the first point is obviously we've got 76% social rented homes across the estate anyway. So, the vast majority of homes are social rent. So there's an element of that percentage being maintained on the single aspect point. But I'd also talk about the quality of the homes. Now, those single aspect social rented homes are all in the tower block. So they're all going to enjoy, good views in effect. So, I'd say if you were sort of living up on the 10th floor of the, when I say the tower block, I mean the 22-storey tower block within the scheme. So I'd say the views they will enjoy will be, significant and, quite a nice place to live. So, we do feel that overall percentage is high and that the tenure split reflects the overall tenure split of the proposal, and that the single aspect homes that there are will be of a high standard and still be good places to live.
They're all in the 22 story, so they're all concentrated in the tower.
So the 38 rented single aspect homes are in the tower, which is all social rented, whereas the 16 market homes are in one of the blocks on the Bromyard site.
No, I was referring to social.
Yes, they're all in the tower. Yes. So the tower has 6 flats per core, 4 on the corners and 2 in the middle, if you like.
Thank you. Councillor Whittam.
Can you tell us about the service charges for the different tenures? Does the social rented ones, is it all included in the rent?
Would I be allowed to ask my colleague? Patricia, would you be able to help? Do you want to come up?
And if you could just introduce yourself for the record, thank you.
So afternoon or evening rather. My name is Patricia Lewins. I'm the project manager who's been working on the project since basically the inception. Regarding service charges and rents, it's not something that we've started to work out yet. It's something that the housing team, so Mike Tyrrell, who's unwell at the moment, he's leading on that. But what we've got in the landlord offer is the commitment to set that out. And once the homes are being pre-allocated, once residents have registered, decided whether they want to return to the estate or not, there will be a booklet provided that sets all of that information out. There is an understanding that there might be a slight increase regarding the rents and service charges, which is reflective of the new homes, but it will still be within the social rent or target rents rather. So it will definitely remain affordable, but I don't have that level of detail available for you at the moment, but we can provide that at a later date.
Do you want to follow that up? I could see you had a following up kind of face on you, Councillor.
I think we should have something in the decision notice that we want the rents and service charge to be together as part as the social rent in the social rented sector, that the service charge should not be so large as to price out people from those rents. But I don't know how we do that. Maybe Sadia could help.
Chair, if I may, we have some updated drafting in our Section 106 agreements to deal with this service charge issue in terms of service charge increases. In terms of making social rents inclusive of service charges, that isn't possible under the way the definitions of social rent and the way it's defined as a target rent effectively, and the way that those formulas are worked out. So it's not possible to have it inclusive, but it is possible for us to make sure that increases are limited.
And just to clarify, is that something we can agree as part of the recommendation today?
I think it's just part of our standard drafting now. It kind of stems from previous discussions with Councillor Seaton.
Councillor Whittam.
Can we have it as an informative that the committee wants the service charges to be limited to not increase the total paid above the target rent?
It has to be above the target. It can't be within that target rent, because otherwise it comes out of the definition of what a social rent product is, and it potentially affects grant funding. So I understand the ambition behind what you're trying to say, but by doing that, you're inadvertently restricting the delivery of social rent, is the feedback that we're getting back from the GLA when we draft these 106 agreements and they have to go to GLA for stage 2.
Can I pass over to Colin Wilson?
Yeah, and to confirm, both the Ledbury and Tustin Estate are entirely dependent on, not entirely dependent, but they're very dependent on GLA grant funding. So the GLA, if you like, invent the rules for providing grants, and they're providing the grants on the basis that Saudi has set out, and the grant contribution, and Patricia may be able to confirm, is fairly significant for this scheme. So if we were to forego that would basically undermine the entire project.
So just to check further, I understand the point you're making about social rent, that if you're setting rents at target rent level, you're setting them at target rent level, and that can't be inclusive of other things. I think the concern that I'm hearing from members of the committee is what they don't want is to have a situation where you have target rents that are a level, and then you have service charges on top of that, which are so large they effectively price out the people that these homes are meant to help. So it's what we might be able to agree today, which might be able to control that, or at least inform the decisions that are made.
I think the Council's newly adopted standard drafting deals with that point. I don't have it to hand, so I can't quote it chapter and verse, but it does look to limit service charge increases, so there can't be more than 1%, I think, of CPI. But I don't want to say that in case I've slightly misremembered. But the drafting does deal with the point, because this has come up in recent schemes, especially ones which are trying to get through to stage 2 with the GLA.
Is that helpful? We can, and obviously if the committee wants to pursue that further once we've heard the presentations, that's fine. Councillor Cumbo.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard both in the officer's report and today that there isn't as yet a Section 278 agreement in place with TfL. I wondered if you had any further comment or information on that from the applicant's perspective.
This is still undergoing negotiation. The project cannot absorb these additional costs outside of what's included within the red line and directly outside of it, especially given the current climate that we're in. We're facing escalating costs. It's our job and our duty to manage these costs, and we understand that each of the stakeholders and the other bodies that we're working with, they each all have their pressures, but within the council our responsibility is to be able to focus on delivering as many social homes as possible. And as Colin has just mentioned, we're delivering this with a substantial amount of public funding, so it's our responsibility to try and protect that as much as possible.
Go ahead.
To come in on the point about the Section 278s for TfL, as Tim set out, the agreed 278s are for spending on Old Kent Road and Commercial Way. I think our view would be, as officers, that we should actually prioritise spending on Commercial Way for the reasons that were set out earlier by Lucy. What TfL are asking for is that we also contribute monies to the other side of the Old Kent Road. There are other development sites on the other side of the Old Kent Road, and what we've been saying to TfL is we think as they come forward, they will do their own 278s. TfL do have a draft project to improve the Old Kent Road, which we are very supportive of, but we feel that it's only reasonable that as developments come forward on each side, they make a contribution, and you don't sort of try and get one scheme to provide for the other side of the road as well. So that's a point of dispute.
We're still on questions to the applicants, I need to remind people, but Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Given the level of uncertainty around what future bus routes may or may not be, and the resident concerns we've heard about current traffic levels, what provision on site is there for cyclists?
So the scheme, I mean, it's probably worth saying that the current estate has very limited provision. There's a cycle hanger, and that's pretty much a couple of Sheffield stands, and that's about it. So the new proposal has a sort of fully compliant range of internal cycle stores situated throughout the estate, so each block will have its own store. I can't off the top of my head remember how many hundreds of cycle spaces that equates to, but we are talking about 500 or so odd spaces. 600 plus. 600, thank you. So those are in compliance with the Southwark standards, and we think there'll be an excellent provision, and certainly miles better than what's there at the moment.
Councillor Papila.
I just wanted quick clarification as to why there was a lack of additional 4 and 5 beds, since, as we all know, there is a massive overcrowding issue both in the ward and neighbouring wards. So I just wanted clarification as to why there was such an emphasis on 3 beds rather than 4 and 5 that are badly needed.
So the makeup of the 340 homes are 224 of those are replacement homes from the tower blocks, and the remaining 116 of that, the social rent, that is based on actual housing need. So the project management team, we've been working very closely over the past year or so with the housing team, and the brief has been informed by actual housing need in the immediate area. So we could actually tell you the families, I mean, they don't know me, but I've met them, but I know the family that's earmarked for the 5 beds as well as the 2 of the 3 4-beds. So it's also about what we're able to deliver in terms of like there's planning policy compliance, where you've got to provide a certain quantum of 1, 2 and 3 beds. So it's also balancing that along with the constraints of the site and the remaining number of homes that we're able to provide. So the bottom line is, though, is the immediate need for those 4 and 5 beds, we're meeting that within the immediate vicinity.
Thank you. Unless there's any further questions, should we move on to other... we know there aren't any supporters. Have we managed to get the statement produced? Given that the supporters did register that they wanted to speak and present here, but unfortunately haven't been because they have an event, I understand, on Wednesday, and can't therefore be here. Are we at committee happy for the officer to read out the statement? Yes. Thank you.
Do I have a 3-minute?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a statement from the Ledbury Estate Resident Project Group. It says, representatives of the Ledbury Estate Resident Project Group would have liked to address those present in person, but due to unforeseen circumstances of several of our members, they are incapacitated and unable to attend. Since the commencement of the planning process, the residents of the Ledbury Estate have been fully consulted by Southwark Council at a detailed level, and the 2 committees have formed. The Resident Project Group, RPG, and the Design Subcommittee have aimed to represent the views of residents about the future of the estate. Both committees have been meeting monthly with an almost 100% attendance record record by committee members and have had very helpful support from Southwark Council. The extent of involvement of the committees is evidenced by the fact that the RPG Design Committee participated in the selection process for the architects who were designing the estate. In particular, the RPG welcomed the increase in the number of council flats made possible by the densification of the estate, and that there will be a new modern TRA hall. The plans pay particular attention to the need for residents to feel secure, an approach which the RPG fully endorse. Establishing common goals between residents and the council and recognising and addressing residents' needs has made this process effective. There are issues that remain to be resolved: the State Road, the junction of the Old Kent Road and Commercial Way, location of letterboxes and parking bays, but the continuation to involve residents and making sure that there is consultation throughout the process of developing the next level of detail of the designs will make this possible. So the RPG want to affirm the support of the planning application and look forward to buildings starting. Put best in the words of Mark Twain, quote, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started," close quotes, the end.
Thank you. I don't think we can ask questions to the supporters so they're not here. Are there any ward councillors present that wish to speak? In that case, can we ask that the applicants vacate the desk and the ward councillors come forward? Thank you. You have 3 minutes between you, and I'll allow you to split the time as you think most appropriate.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Councillor Michael Shitu, and my colleague, Councillor Ivina Koto, will be adding on a bit afterwards. We're very proud to be supporting this application today. We feel that it's been a long time coming. Since being councillors in the area, residents have raised issues with us about different aspects of the Ledbury estate in itself, but certainly we are where we are because of the fire safety issues and structural issues which was identified on the Ledbury itself. But what the council has done is use the opportunity to try and address some of the more long-term issues within the estate in itself, and I'm glad that this has sought to address that. Chief among that is the fact that local residents have been telling us for decades that they want good, more social rented council homes in and around the Old Kent Road, and this increases the number of that in itself, and not just the number but also the quality of it itself. We've called for larger size units. We've got that. I noted that we could have more 4-bed and 5-bed, but certainly these are things that we could work on for the future. We certainly welcome also the fact that there are larger community space as well, and we see this as a much family-friendly development. We also welcome the fact that actually the community centre will be much larger. There's more green space, and we also welcome the fact that also there will be an opportunity for those who do prefer greener modes of transport within the area, such as more cycle hangers will be available within the estate. All in all, we're not saying that this is perfect, but actually this demonstrates a good, strong kind of development between residents and council officers in trying to achieve the kind of regenerations we should all like to see in Southwark.
And I'm sure he's taken up the 3 minutes, but I'm going to add a little bit to it.
Sorry.
Too. So I just want to take opportunity, and I concur with everything Michael has said, take the opportunity to say a big thank you to the RPG, because they've been really instrumental in making sure that that co-production really works well, and Neil Purvis, who has been working with residents. So I think we can say that this is a proposal that residents want, and we can wholeheartedly support that. I think I will raise one concern, and it's about the traffic management, and we've heard from Lucy already about this, and especially around demolition and construction. We are already getting a large number of concerns about that road, especially Birds in the Bush, Commercial Way, Ledbury Road, exacerbated with heavy duty vehicles because of existing development nearby. So what I will ask, and we've heard about traffic calming measures that is going to be produced, what I will ask is that officers, when produced, work very closely with the resident group to make sure that they're happy with what we put in place, and that anything that we put in place will actively, aim to reduce the issues that we're facing right now along the road.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Soanes.
Well, Chair, I don't really have a question because the question was going to be around the comments that we heard from Lucy. So I'm pleased that you've actually raised that. And I mean, how hard I know you've worked quite collaboratively to in terms of consultation for this application, but what representations have you given to council officers in support of the issues raised by Lucy? Because we got the impression that they've been actually quite long-standing, and I certainly, I can't speak on behalf of my colleagues here, but I felt that she hadn't been heard or listened enough. So what can you do to sort of alleviate those fears going forward for us, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor Soanes, for the question. I sympathise with Lucy, not just Lucy, but residents along the commercial way in itself, because certainly they've raised it with us as councillors for a number of years, and equally we've had different meetings with officers in relation to how the traffic safety issues, on particularly the northern part of commercial way, could be elevated in itself. And several options have been tried, as you read from Lucy, in terms of both having hubs, thinking of different traffic calming measure. But it's very clear that what the sort of changes that is needed are the sort of changes that needs to look at some form of redesign, some form of larger piece of thinking. And I think the money that comes from the Section 106 will give us the opportunity to do that, which we didn't have before. We've certainly, as councillors, used some of our CGS grant to support this, to improve the situation there. But of course, we accept that it's residents living on that particular side and stretch of commercial way who are bearing the brunt on a daily basis. We've seen some of the videos thankfully taken by them and passed on to us, which we've passed on to officers. And we hope that this development would also offer a much renewed, realistic prospect and opportunity to actually resolve the issue on commercial way for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. I'm heartened by that response. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for coming along. You can step back now and we'll get into the discussion of committee to debate this item before we take any decisions. Any committee member that wishes to speak? For me, there seem to be two significant issues that probably warrant further discussion. First of all, the issues about traffic on Commercial Way and what can be done around that. And secondly, the issues that Councillor Whittam raised about service charges and what more we might be able to do in that area. Are there any other issues that people particularly feel we need to be looking at as part of the discussion? Okay. Officers, have you got any comments on those two issues first, unless anybody wants to say anything further?
Chair, can I talk about the service charge issue? So I've just double checked, and the Section 106 agreement does say that service charges have to be reasonable, so that is the starting point. And we've also got some drafting in there which says any increases have to be the lower of CPI plus 1% or whatever the government sets nationally. So that ensures that there's a bit of a threshold, which should hopefully deal with some concerns. And Colin?
And I suppose the other point worth mentioning is that the council are the applicants and are the housing authority. So we have a kind of standard clause which limits the service charge, but clearly other parts of the council can act on the service charge if that was the decision of the council. So I would say it's not necessarily to try and resolve that within the planning permission, as it would be, say, we're dealing with a private developer or a housing association.
Thank you. And Alex, do you want to talk about the transport issues?
Yes. Thanks, Chair. In terms of highway safety, the list of works for Section 278 agreement was for the council is quite comprehensive, and most of them are focused on commercial way, so stroke Bud in Bush Road. So the thing with commercial way, it actually has extensive road safety measure, but they are badly worn. So in fact, one of the scheme that we put forward now on page 98 is to improve pedestrian crossing facilities around Bromyard side. If you've been there, you see that that junction is supposed to be raised, but you wouldn't notice it's badly worn. That is why it's not providing the mechanism, traffic calming measure that we expect. So by upgrading that, raise it up and make sure that it creates the actual gradient that will slow vehicles down. That will slow vehicles down. And then one of the schemes we're looking at is to convert a couple of the humps to race table. So with that sequential racing of the profile there, it would sort of reduce speed of traffic traveling around there. The road safety measures are there, like I said, they just badly worn. So they need to be upgraded to provide effective slowing of vehicles down. And in terms of the trucks that will be associated with the implementation of the development, in the construction management plans, 3 relevant obligations there. One is that construction vehicles must avoid residential streets. So they will have to provide the routing of construction vehicles, and we have to agree to make sure that they don't travel unnecessarily on residential street. So it might be they have to use strategic routes like Oak Kent Road, and they should be able to come in from there without going through the entire length of commercial way. The other thing we look at is time deliveries to make sure that not, every delivery to the site is timed, not like, necessary appearance of various vehicles at the same time. So we have to minimize maybe 1 or 2 at a time. And then the other thing we look at is consolidation of deliveries as well, to make sure that all those trucks are not running on empty, so they can, consolidate the delivery at once. So construction management plan will actually solve the problem relating to construction vehicles for the site. And in terms of the parking restriction extension of CPZ, before this development is completed, the CPZ would have kicked in anyway, because it would take like 2 years before this building is completed. So by that time, the CPZ, I think is, like my colleague said, is around April next year. And another thing, in terms of reducing traffic as well, in the presentation, I think you must have noticed that we're introducing car club. Once we have an on-site car club, it will minimize people's need to actually own a car. So even though we have additional residential units, they know the car club is there. They won't have be pressured to go and buy a car and be looking for car parking spaces. So, and plus, the new residents will not have a car parking permit as well. So and then we're introducing cycle hire as well, to complement the cycle parking provision for the site. So when you look at all these comprehensive issues, you know that the development has covered all grounds.
Thank you. I can see a few hands sprouting at that. I'm going to take you running down that way. So Councillor Leeming.
Thank you very much, Alex. As a councillor with a keen interest in transport issues, I mean, it seems to me that having listened to, firstly, the resident Lucy tonight, I completely understand where they're coming from. These are many of the issues that I've heard in my ward as well, but also listening to the conversation and looking at the report, it does seem that many of these things are being addressed, but they're sort of buried in the detail, and it hasn't been brought up enough and communicated in a way that makes sense to the residents. I wonder if there is a sense that of looking at this perhaps slightly separately to the to the redevelopment, and actually coming up with a plan that you can show to the residents of a slightly wider area about how the local transport schemes will be addressed and their concerns will be allayed. And again, on the construction management plan, it feels to me that like the tools are there, but if they are made very clear and robust, and residents have some kind of feeling of ownership and control over that, with an ability to comment on the construction management plan once it's in place, then that again might go some way to alleviating their concerns.
By all means, we can do that. One of the things is that when this section 278 works are being prepared, we have to draw all the schemes, annotate them, then we can share that with the local residents to say this is the plan, this is what we are putting into place for them to see it. Another thing is we'll work with our highways team as well to say they might have schemes in the area as well that they want to implement. So we collate everything together and share with the local residents. The construction management plan is actually online as well when they submit it. Once we agree there, we can share with the local resident. And indeed, if they want any extra obligation in there, we can work with our customers to make sure they include that. But the obligations within the construction management plan is quite comprehensive anyway. It would alleviate most of the problems. But we can work with our local residents if they want extra to be included.
Can I come back very briefly on that? I mean, it seems to me from what I've heard that the engagement with the people living on the Ledbury estate has been outstanding, and I wonder if the same level of has been put in with people who are living around the Ledbury estate, and whether it might be something to put back to the local councillors that they organise a resident, if one doesn't already exist, that there are some spokespeople in the local community who can be liaised with alongside the tenants groups on the Ledbury, and so that we might set up that dialogue as well, if it doesn't already exist.
Once we get the right, we walk through the ward members to supply them with the information that we get, especially the construction management plan. Once we're about to agree that we can share that with them, it's the only thing is it's always a big document, so we share that with the local residents.
Colin, you wanted to add something very briefly on construction management.
Yes, just to confirm that we've Stuart Wrigley in our highways team has set up a construction management coordination group with all the developers in the Old Kent Road at the moment, and part of the proposal there is to invite residents along to that, and the construction managers from various sites will be attending. And part of the idea of that as well was absolutely to try and explain not just about that particular sites, but the wider sites, but also give a very direct contact between residents and the construction managers of each of the sites. So we should be setting that up kind of over the summer. But the group's meeting already, so I was at a meeting of that this afternoon.
Councillor Papula.
Most of my thunder's been stolen. But what I wanted to ask, with regards to cycle hire, who's going to provide that? Will that be Transport for London? And if that's the case, of course, I don't believe that'll be feasible since of course their funding's been cut. And if so, how will you deal with that? How will you ensure that there are cycling opportunities for people on that site? And a further question with regards to that: how will you ensure that cyclists feel safe on that road? Beyond, of course, what you've mentioned on the construction management plan, because I believe there's a real emphasis on, of course, cars and pedestrians, but there's not really been much talk of cyclists in general.
with the cyclists, bus lane, they are encouraged to share the bus lanes as well. And then with the traffic calming measures that we are introducing, even though we talk about pedestrian, it assists cyclists as well. When vehicles slow down, a cyclist will be safe. The crossing point that we might improve, it will encourage cyclists as well to cross safely. So both are looked at in parallel in terms of the safety measures we are introducing.
And just in terms of the point about cycle hire, presumably this is still within the council's cycle hire rollout plan.
Yes, it will be.
And so that has routes for funding it all, and that's agreed with TfL, and that's not a threat under the current budget situation, as I understand. Is that correct?
We have to work with TfL. The thing with this development will provide we need to look at
Alex, could you press the button so people can hear?
Chair, we need to look, we identify the location, on-site location within this site. Then we work with TfL to say if they can provide the cycle hire within that. It may well mean that that will form part of existing rollout that they are doing, because they have cycle hire initiative in the whole borough now that they're looking at. So if there's one that is close, we say, okay, why don't you put that onto this side that we're looking at without affecting the financial position of the council.
Councillor Papula, you look as if you want to follow that one up.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's not really confirmed then. It's not set in stone, since it seems that funding is quite abstract still. Is that correct?
TfL has existing rollout, but we need to look at the area. They're quite close. There are some that are close. So we have to work with them to say, if there's one that they're introducing that is close, we've got this site, we're introducing one, the space for them, and they can put that in there. It's just the two authorities working closely to make sure that happens.
And I think it's just worth reminding committee members that obviously there has been the rollout of the cycle hire to a number of new locations a bit closer to the Old Kent Road in recent months. So it is a scheme that TfL is still rolling out further. And on page 99, Colin has helpfully pointed out that that it's the council that is contributing the money for the docking station at this location. So that money is being provided by the council through this application.
Can I also add, that's £50 per home that goes towards the expansion of that cycle docking station. I also want to point out that part of that site fronting Old Kent Road is identified as potential location for a cycle superhighway, and the development is set back 7 metres from the curb line, so that allows for that cycle facility to be provided. TfL has also expressed a desire to provide a cycle safe service treatment along the new State Road, so that could be safe for cyclists to go through that along from Commercial Way to Pencrake Way.
Thank you. Councillor Soames.
I echo my colleague Richard Leeming's comments regarding consultation with the residents and bringing to the forefront some of your plans so that they are fully aware of what is proposed. But going back to the Objector Lucy, so I acknowledge that there'll be obviously a really comprehensive, robust construction management plan, which you've already outlined, and I know that the councillors, local councillors and officers will work to ensure that that is delivered. But I got the impression, and I could be wrong, that she alluded to the fact that there are currently heavy good vehicles that use Commercial Way as a bit of a rat run at the moment. So I know that there will be controlled measures around large trucks during the construction period, but what about now what's being done to reroute those vehicles, or do you actually perceive it as an issue?
Generally, most most vehicles will use any highway unless there's a lorry ban. So what we can do is to work with to report that to our network management team to look at the problems associated with lorries using that as a route run. So there might be something they can put into place. Because at the moment, commercial ways hasn't got any lorry ban. So if there's no lorry ban, any vehicle will use that. So there might be something they can do, maybe to make it difficult for lorries. But we'll report that to our network management team to look into that.
Thank you. And could I just remind people, obviously we're looking at the merits of the application here and not the issues which exist before anything is built. Although that's very important and it certainly needs to be acknowledged by our transport team here at the council. Any further questions, comments that anybody wants to raise? If there's no further debate, the motion put in front of us is set out on the first page of the report. So I'd like to ask that we move to adopt the officer's recommendations unless there's any amendments that people wish to notify us of.
Chair, could I just...
Sorry, yes.
Sorry, could I just highlight, I don't think I said it in my presentation, but it's in the addendum, that the recommendations being amended so that the deadline for the unilateral to be completed by the 1st of October. So at the moment, the committee report says 1st of August, but given that the committee is only today, we probably need a little bit more time to refer it to Mayor of London, so it's being changed to 1st of October.
Thank you very much. Thank you, that's very helpful. So just so that people are clear what the recommendation is, that planning permission be granted subject conditions, referral to the Mayor of London and the completion of a unilateral undertaking. And in the event that the requirements of paragraph 1 are not met by the 1st of October, as now amended, 2022, the Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out in paragraph 438 of this report. Do I see anybody that's willing to propose that motion? Vote for that. Councillor Whittam.
For, Chair.
Councillor Cumbo.
For, Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Leeming.
For, Chair.
Councillor Papula.
For, Chair.
Councillor Roberts.
For, Chair.
Councillor Soanes.
For, Chair.
And I am also voting for, so that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. So that motion is carried. The application is granted. Thank you. That brings us on to the next item, which is...
Seconded.
That seems like a very popular proposal. So yes, 5 minutes, and if we can be back by 20 past. Thank you. Meeting back to order. We're now moving on to item 7.2, the Valmar Trading Estate. So I'd like to ask officers to present the report. I understand Vendella is that you're going to be leading on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, and we've been trying to, because both this and the previous presentation are quite lengthy, so if possible, if we could try and rattle through it as quickly as possible, although obviously covering all the detail, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So my name is Vendela Gamble. I'm in the major applications team at Southwark. And I'll be presenting the Valmar Trading Estate this evening. Firstly, before I begin my presentation, I'd just like to draw members' attention to the addendum, which was issued earlier today. And some of these references some minor changes in the wording and the numbering of conditions. There was also one additional objection received after the committee report was published, which referred to some concerns regarding the transport impacts on the site. The addendum clarifies that the transport impacts are less than consented within the extant permission, and this will be described in detail in this presentation. Paragraph 227 and 228 of the committee report also specifies the outcomes of a community engagement with specific amenity groups and a financial contribution for the cycle hire docking station, which was to address some of residents' concerns regarding wayfinding and pedestrian movement. I'd also like to clarify that the proposal is for an EE medical center use rather than hospital use, which was described in the addendum. Hospital use can be interpreted as C2 or providing residential accommodation. However, this application is only proposing medical and health services only, so it would be non-residential in a non-residential capacity. And this is referred to as EE within this presentation. So I'd also like to emphasize before beginning my presentation that there's an existing extant permission on site, and this is reference 19 AP 0864, following a planning committee resolution in September 2020, and a subsequent section 106 in January 2021. And the extant permission is able to be implemented and forms a material consideration when assessing the scheme. So I'll refer to this extant permission in comparison to the proposal throughout my presentation, as it forms a material basis for this officer's recommendation. So firstly, in terms of the site context, the Valmar Trading Estate is located between Denmark Hill and Valmar Road, and it contains 8 industrial units. The entire site is now vacant. The only vehicular access is from Valmar Road, and there's pedestrian access via passageway on Denmark Hill and Milkwell Yard. And the surrounding land use is of residential units to the north and west, and a mix of commercial and residential units to the south and east within the Camberwell town centre. The site's located within a site allocation, NSP 27 within the Southwark plan, which requires the existing amount of employment floor space to be re-provided, and a new route through the site, and the development on site to provide new homes. The Camberwell Green Conservation Area boundary also runs diagonally across Unit 1A and the Denmark Hill access point. And there's some site photographs on the slides right now of the existing condition of the site. So the extant permission was granted and remains extant. This permitted demolition of the existing buildings on the site and the erection of 3 new buildings, which are referred to as blocks A, B, and C. The extant permission contains almost 3,500 square meters of employment space, a 127-room hotel, a cafe, and 43 residential units. The building would be set around 2 new routes, which would connect Valmar Road, Milkwell Yard, and Denmark Hill. Block C is shown in blue at the center of the site on the image to the left, and was consented as a 3 to 7 story high building above basement and would contain employment space, hotel, and cafe. Block A is in blue to the left of the image on the screen and would be 5 to 6 stories in height, containing employment space on the ground floor and mezzanine and residential units above. And Block B is located on the bottom of the image on the screen and would be 3 to 4 stories high and entirely residential. There's also a vehicular access route from Valmar Road with pedestrian and cyclist access also from Valmar Road, Milkwell Yard, and Denmark Hill. So as you can see by the side-by-side images, the location of the blocks and the layout would be identical with the extant permission as the proposal. So the main changes between the extant permission and the proposal now before members is described within paragraphs 18 to 24 of the committee report. Block A was approved to provide 694 square meters of employment space and 15 residential units within the extant permission. The proposal is now to provide 675 square meters of employment space and 15 residential units with no changes to the building envelope. So there's a slight decrease of 19 square meters of employment floor space. Block B was consented with 28 residential units in the extant permission, and this will be identical in the proposals. And Block C was consented to provide 2,752.9 square meters of employment space and 127 bedroom hotel and cafe. The proposal is now to provide 5,540 square meters of medical center Class EE use, which is a net increase in 2,787 employment floor space in this block. The scheme proposes to reduce the massing of Block C. So the extant permission was 24.6 meters maximum height above ground floor, and the proposal will be a maximum 23.8 meters above ground, which is a slight 1.2 meter reduction in height from the extant permission. Sorry, I'm just going to go through the slides quickly. So here's the Block C elevation, and you can see the comparisons. And we can go back to these later on if you want to look in further detail. So I just wanted to bring up this comparative drawings. So between the massing and the building footprint of the proposal, it'll be reduced as shown in this drawing, where the red dashed line is the outline of the extant permission at Block C, and then the solid color would be the proposals. So in line with the extant permission, the height scale and massing of Block A is retained. It would be part 5, part 6 stories, a maximum of 18.74 meters above ground level. And it would retain the 15 residential units identical to the extant permission. So I would just like to go through the objections and the public consultation responses on site next. So there was 3 representations in support of the application, 5 objections and 2 neutral comments. That's not including the one objection that was received after the committee report was published. So the objections raised concerns over the transport impact of the medical use and the additional noise creation, and the potential loss of amenity. So overall, the trip generation is anticipated to be less than the extant permission. It should be noted that the medical center will be an outpatient and diagnostic facility providing non-acute services, thus primarily consisting of daytime visitors, and there'll not be any ambulances traveling to and from the site, and this will be secured within the decision notice. One of the concerns raised by members prior to the committee was also in relation to a risk of parking taking place outside of the site, and in particular, concerns were raised about ambulances reportedly parking at the Crawford estate, using spaces allocated to residents. So, as mentioned previously, the proposed medical use is to provide non-acute services, and there'll be no ambulances traveling to and from the site. There will be patient transfer vehicles occasionally deployed to transport less able patients from King's College Hospital for scans or other treatments in the new facility. However, it's expected that most patients will be using public transport, and there's 1 space allocated for disabled users. So no ambulances are anticipated to be found on the Crawford estate. However, the applicants agreed to meet with TRA and residents of the Crawford estate to further discuss and find any appropriate solutions to the concerns. So I'll just quickly go through the land use component. So in terms of the extant permission, there's a slight increase in the employment floor space, as mentioned earlier. there's a slight diversion from the site allocation in that the allocation requests to retain EG use specifically, whereas this is providing EE use, which is another employment-generating floor space. However, this is deemed acceptable by officers because it supports the ambitions of the Camberwell area vision and the development plan. In terms of the number of jobs created, it'll mean urgent need within the local area and create an anticipated 154 net jobs to support the local town centre. So the tenure mix is identical to the extant permission, creating 43 new residential units, 35% affordable by habitable rooms, and policy compliant social and intermediate rented homes. The dwelling mix is also policy compliant with 83.7% with 2+ bedrooms and 67.4% with 3+ bedrooms. So the social rented units are 14 in total and located Block A, and the remaining private units will be located in Block B with the exception of one private unit on the first floor of Block A. The wheelchair unit mix meets the minimum policy requirements, providing 4 1-beds and 2 2-bed wheelchair units. 5 will be private and located in Block B, and 1 social rented is a 2-bed located in Block A. The play space is identical to the extant permission. 2 play spaces are proposed, 1 gated and accessed by residents for younger children, and this is located to the south of the site, adjacent to Block B, and a place for older children is located between Block A and C to the north of the site. A condition will be included in the draft recommendation to ensure the play space, design, and equipment is appropriate. So 245 square meters is catered for the 5 to 11-year-olds, and 93 square meters is catered for over 11s, which is approximately 55 square meters above the GLA requirements. In terms of proposed amenity space, this is identical to the extant permission. So Block A provides policy compliant private amenity where all units meet or exceed 10 square meters. There's a 12 square meter private amenity shortfall in Block B, and this is due to 3 1-beds providing a private amenity of 6 square meters, and this is added to the expected communal amenity space mix in Block B. So Block A, in terms of communal amenity space, has a 23 square meter under provision, providing 27 square meters of communal amenity space. However, this is accepted because the private amenity is high, exceeding the 10 square meters in all instances, and some units greatly exceeding this figure. Block A will have access to Block B's communal amenity space and alternative play space throughout the site, which suggests on balance high quality of residential accommodation. And Block B provides 62 square meters of communal amenity space. In terms of neighboring amenity, daylight and sunlight impacts on the proposed scheme are improvements from the extant permission due to the slight reduction in massing. Similarly, as mentioned earlier, the new medical center use noise impacts are anticipated to be no greater than the extant permission. This is also secured through an operational management plan and a construction management plan. In terms of energy efficiency, the proposal results in a 45% energy savings, which is an improvement from the extant permission, which was anticipated at 40% on site. And this is achieved through 18% savings for B lean component of the development and 27% through the B green component of the development. Whilst there's no planned district heating networks in the area, the Section 106 should require the development to be future-proof to connection in the event that network is to come online. So the B scene requirement will be included within the Section 106 agreement, and the carbon offset contribution is £250,000, £800, which will be secured within the Section 106. So in terms of the urban greening factor, there's an improvement from the extant scheme, which provides 0.31 gain, which is policy compliant with the residential component of the London plan. This will be through an increase in 1,080 square meters of green and brown roofs. Additionally, 24 Swift bricks and 6 bat tubes will be set into the building, which is secured by condition. And one Class C tree is lost as a result of the development. However, 18 new trees will be planted, which is the same as with the extant development. In terms of the access delivery and servicing, this is the same as the extant permission. Whilst objections did raise concerns about the transport impacts and increased vehicles using Valmar Road, the transport assessment has identified that the vehicle generation will be slightly less than the extant permission, reducing it from an anticipated 101 and 67 two-way public transport trips during the morning and evening peaks to 120 and 27 public transport trips. All servicing would take place from within the site, and this includes emergency services and refuse vehicles, which are able to enter the site in the forward gear. As with the extant permission, cycle parking would be provided in accordance with the London plan, and a contribution towards a docking station in the town centre would be provided in the event that a cycle hire scheme is extended into Camberwell within 2 years of the occupation of development. A car club space and car club membership would be provided, and there are 5 accessible parking spaces which would be fitted with electrical vehicle charging points. So this table just summarizes the environmental considerations, and in summary, officers recommend the scheme for approval. The extant permission is a material consideration in the termination, and the proposed changes include the scheme, which include the slight reduction in massing and change of use from hotel to medical use should be supported. And the proposed scheme would provide high-quality employment, residential use, and pedestrian link between Valmar Road and Denmark Hill, which supports the ambition of the site allocation and local plan, and this should be supported. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Whitton.
Can I just ask Michael, on page 42, the conservation area shows the entrance to Valmar Road, and then there's a kink in it, in the red line. Are we losing anything there?
No. The boundary of the conservation area typically follows the plot layouts that, forgive me, the boundaries of the plots that are fronting onto Denmark Hill in that location, and these are sort of the rears of the properties. It's open land, which is so there's no sort of loss of any fabric in that location. It's just the extent of the plots that are being consolidated here. That's being consolidated into this site, and as part of the red falls within the red line. So it's not causing any harm to the conservation area.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This might be a naive question. I assume because there is extant permission in place, that is unaffected by any discussion or decision that happens tonight. And were this proposal to be rejected, the extant permission could simply be built, or are the two connected in a way that the extant permission time expires?
Yeah, so the extant permission would remain if this proposal was rejected tonight.
Councillor Cumbo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking again at the objections that are summarised at the start of the officer's report. In a couple of those, the reason given, well, the officer comment given is that, well, this is no different or indeed better than the extant permission. At least 3 of us on this planning committee were not even councillors at the time of the previous permission. I just wondered if there was anything you could add, as though it was an entirely new application. Well, it is an entirely new application, but as if there had been no previous discussion. And I'm thinking particularly on the points made here around overlooking and the development being too high.
I'm not sure if Vicky, you want to take this as the officer of the previous application.
Is there? There should be some information in the report about the privacy, the separation distances. Can you have you got that available?
Yeah.
So in the report, we've assessed daylight, sunlight impacts and privacy and overlooking. On the daylight and sunlight impacts for the extant permission, we were concerned about some of the impacts to some properties on the back of Denmark Hill. So we got the developer to reduce the massing in that location, to improve some of the outlook and light levels to that. To improve some of the daylight and sunlight levels to those properties. And that was accompanied by a detailed daylight and sunlight report, which was based on guidance by the Building Research Establishment. So we tested it against that. And having taken all of that into account, we thought that the impacts in terms of daylight and sunlight was okay. As Vendela said, this scheme is going to offer some slight improvements. I think it's a one-storey reduction in height and about 1.2 metre reduction in the height of the main block, which is closest because it's mainly those properties that be affected by the changes to the main block within the centre of the site. So we looked at that very carefully. We think it was acceptable. That was accepted. Permission was granted, and what we would get now is a slight improvement because of the massing changes to block to the block C. I haven't got the information in front of me in relation to the privacy distances.
So if you turn to paragraph 148 of the officer report, 148 to 151, we discuss overlooking and privacy of neighbouring property.
Yes, I'll apologise. I didn't mean to reference the overlooking, because I noted that you did cover that in the report, and I didn't mention the sunlight and daylight impact for that reason, because it was comprehensively covered in the report. The point I should have raised was at paragraph 34, the impact on local views. Was there anything on that you would add?
Thank you, Chair. The local views is a particular consideration in the context of the setting of the conservation area. That was a very importantly consideration in the extant permission, where the proposal was slightly visible over the rooftops of the properties on Denmark Hill approaching Camberwell Green. In the main, the scheme is not visible from the surrounding area, but there are certain instances where it will appear over the rooftops, and in this instance, the reduction in height helps to reduce that further. Within the conservation area, due to the heights of the buildings either side and the sort of close context of the conservation area, it won't be visible despite its size, but it will be visible in some instances from the junction, the road junction with Camberwell Green. But we are satisfied that due to the high quality of the design, the good quality materials and so on, and the limited degree of visibility over the, as I said, over the rooftops, around the chimneys and so on, over the rooftops, it is, and set in the background, it won't be causing any harm to the views within the conservation area and the setting of the conservation area. The frontages are retained, and it's not dominant in those views.
Councillor Leaming.
Yes, I note that if you look at page 247, I've just lost the paragraph number, apologies, but you are proposing that it creates a new routes through for pedestrians and cyclists from Denmark Hill through to the road at the bottom, which is Valmar Road. And that some of the space will be shared by pedestrians and cyclists. Are you proposing to do anything to eliminate the perception of or reality of conflict between pedestrians and cyclists at this site?
There are dedicated routes within the site because the turn area is, as you're coming from Valmar Road, the rest of the site is more or less dedicated to pedestrians, and there are two accesses, one from two actually from Denmark Road. Then there's a Makeyard route there by the traffic light where they can go through, and vehicle can only go so far in. They're not going to go towards the building at all. So pedestrians are adequately protected along those routes. So there's minimal contact with vehicles within the courtyard, and they come in and out of Denmark Hill and connecting with Valmar Road.
Any further questions, Councillor Roberts?
Thanks, Chair. It says on page 248 that we've got the Camberwell CPZ operating in that area, paragraph 198. It only operates until 6:30 in the evening. Is that going to be... Does that fit in with the operating hours of what we think the medical centre might be? Is it, is it going to be later appointments? They're going to be able to, they'll bring their car and see if they can park outside?
The medical centre, they are not using vehicles to travel there. When you look at the number of visitors, it's only about 10% of them that will be dropped off by taxi, and maybe a member of the family will drop them off out of, a number of 400 on average per day. So it's very minimal drop-off where to decide, because the applicant did carry out a survey of existing facility within King's College Hospital. So they use that to calculate what this development itself in terms of number of customers, patients that will use vehicle is very minimal. The staff, I think it's only about 5% of the staff out of 150 staff. So minimal use, a majority will use cycling, walking, and then public transport. So it shouldn't create any problem. The CPZ, yes, 6 o'clock, but even if we distribute a minimum number of vehicles, it shouldn't affect the parking at that location.
Councillor.
Just a slight extension of that question. I know that it's only operational during weekdays. What about weekends? Would we consider extending it to the weekends?
Unfortunately, when we assess traffic impact of development, it's going to be weekday, peak hours, morning peak, evening peak. Weekend is regarded as off-peak, where we don't expect that it should affect the number of vehicle movements should be minimal. The same thing with anything after 6 o'clock, for instance, or before 8 o'clock in the morning, weekdays. So we don't really assess, basically we assess weekday, morning peak, evening peak.
So we might get the developer to sort of talk further on that in terms of the hours, I think, and potentially ask them a question. Questions. I have a question which was about the carbon reduction, and we've got 45% carbon reduction, about 49% within the residential element. I know this is comparing apples and pears, but the previous application that we considered tonight had an 89% reduction, this is a 49% reduction. So just wondered whether you knew how the carbon reduction in this application compares with that in the extant application.
So I think in the report I referenced that the extent permission, it was close to 40% reduction in carbon, and so this would be 45%, and I think that was achieved through a slight increase in photovoltaic panels that were being used, covered on the roof. It might be worth directing the question to the applicant if you'd like any more detail.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. If there are no further questions, have we an objector in the audience? If so, please, do you both want to come forward and sit in the seats at the front? We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. It's up to you how you divide the time up between you. If you'd like me to direct you when you're halfway through or anything, if that would help, then please let me know. Just to be aware, I should have said this to the previous objectors, but we are being live streamed. This is on YouTube, so if you want to introduce yourself, just introduce your name and tell us what street you live in. You don't need to give your full address. So I'll allow you to both introduce yourselves, and then I'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Sibby Cole. Road.
And my name's Nikki.
Thank you. Could you just hold on a moment? We seem to have a slight technical difficulty with our lead, so we'll reconnect and then we'll start the 3 minutes.
I'm Nikki Cloutman, flat.
Okay, we'll just record the street address as well than the full address. Thank you. Right, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. As mentioned in the report, I think what's become very clear from the extent permission is that we as residents of Valmar Road feel that there was certain oversights that were made at that time, but we'd like to think in this new era that we're in now, post-COVID, where we've all learnt that the last 2 years it's been essential that how you enjoy your home, how you enjoy your outside space has become vital to all of our well-being. And we feel with this proposal as it currently stands, it very much impinges on our ability to enjoy our homes. Having lived on Valmar Road for 45 years, I think it's us as long-term residents, our duty to share these experiences with you. Very specifically around light and being overlooked. The daylight hour and sunlight report, I'm not sure if we're reading the same one, but in that very report it states that some of the roads have less than 18% of their gardens will get more than 2 hours of daylight when these buildings are built. And I just want to repeat that. 18% of your garden will get 2 hours of sunlight a day. And I think that's the kind of impact that we're all going to have to face, where we're all working from home more and we're all basically spending more time within our home spaces. Also, in terms of the traffic management, the access at Valmar Road is a single access road. The road width is no wider than where this gentleman and this lady are sitting. There is going to be complete backlog and chaos in that area, once not only in the build, but afterwards. Crawford Primary School is there, they have a school streets in place, so Crawford Road is closed for most of the high impact times of the day, and I think that's what's really important, that none of this seems to have been taken into account when we look at this permission. And I feel that if we're listening to some of the comments as well, it is going to be a reality. There's going to be a lot more people there. We're going to have over 100 more residents, and the health centre itself will bring lots of people in. There's going to be Saturday appointments, there's even Sunday appointments that have been slotted in for these diagnostic centres. So I feel that this is an opportunity for us in this post-COVID world to hopefully give us as residents a chance for you to use your conditions to make sure we have peaceful places to live.
I'd like to endorse what Sibby has just said about light, and that's what really concerns me. My understanding is that with this new submission that the residential blocks will be rather nearer to the backs of our walls than was previously the case. For me, in a ground floor flat, and that, there are others in that position, I get daylight during the morning, not in the afternoon. I have to use artificial light. With this development, I'll actually be using lights all day long, and it'll be rather miserable. But also, it's unacceptable. But I just want to make a plea that the buildings are set further back, as was previously the case.
Thank you. That's your time, but thank you very much. Any questions from committee? Councillor Johnson.
Am I correct in saying that the extent permission was further set back, and that was, in your view, a preferable design?
No, not at all, really. I mean, it was still a monolith of a building overlooking us in the extent permission and this current permission as well. What we had hoped in the consultation period that we had with Newby, that there was consideration of bringing it down a floor from 4 stories to 3 stories. That was the hope, but we have seen that hasn't necessarily been taken on board. And also the consideration about the noise. As a hospital, they're going to have air conditioning, they're going to have venting, air source heat pumps, all of these things that are in addition to a noise pollution issue that we're all going to be facing. So, and we know that those run 24/7, they don't switch them off when everybody goes home. So that was a thing that we hadn't had any particular information back on.
Councillor Cumbo.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask a question about the level of consultation that you felt that you had before the previous granting of permission, the extant permission? Were you involved in consultation around that?
I went to a brief consultation meeting, but yeah, not much.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was basically a fait accompli was presented to us. It wasn't a case of us engaging in any kind of dialogue, and they made it clear that it was about creating as many units as possible on the site for revenue generation, especially the private houses and flats that are going to be sold in Block B, in a way to offset the costs of the rest of the build. We have an issue in Camberwell already. There's an oversupply of new builds that are all the way through Camberwell Green at the moment, as well as new developments that are taking place elsewhere around the Morrison's sort of Artichoke Road area. So we knew that that may be an issue for us, but unfortunately it wasn't taken into consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Leeming.
Can I clarify, is it, when you talk about the houses, the buildings being too close to you and cutting out the light, is it Block B that you're mainly concerned about?
Indeed.
Thank you. Any further questions from committee? Thank you very much for coming to talk to us. Thank you. You can move back to the audience. Thank you. Can I ask the applicants or the applicants' agents to come forward? So again, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves, and then I'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Could I just say, sir, that I'm actually going to be reading a statement from Eric Munro, who's the Director of Capital Estates and Facilities at King's College. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today because of a bereavement. So the statement I will read will be him. But my name is Sean Tickle from Wolfchard Planning. We're the planning consultants. Next to me, I have Tim.
Tim Norman, Principal Transport Planner, Odyssey Transport Consultant.
So we can answer, obviously, any questions, but I'll read Eric's statement, if that's okay, sir.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, as Eric said, he cannot attend this evening's committee due to a family bereavement. However, he'd like to highlight the importance of delivering a much-needed facility and ask this committee to approve this application. The proposed outpatients and diagnostic facilities at Valmar Trading Estate provide the Trust with an excellent opportunity to achieve several of its objectives as set out in the Strategic Plan to 2026 and the Emerging Estate Strategy. Part of the development will be a community diagnostic centre, a CDC. The creation of CDCs was recommended following Professor Sir Mike Richards' review of NHS diagnostics capacity. The recommendation was that NHS organisations across England move to providing diagnostic services in CDCs, and all health systems are expected to include a network of CDCs as part of their health services offer. The CDCs will allow patients to access planned diagnostic care nearer to home without the need to attend acute hospital sites. The services would be separate to urgent diagnostic scan facilities, which means shorter waiting times and a reduced risk of cancellation, which can happen when more urgent cases take priority. Therefore, this would lead to improved patient experience and outcomes. The community diagnostic centres will help achieve the following ambitions: improve population health outcomes by diagnosing health conditions earlier, faster and more accurately, increase capacity in the diagnostic service by investing in new facilities, equipment and training for new staff, and contributing to recovery from COVID-19 and reducing pressure on acute hospital sites. Improve productivity and efficiency by streamlining the way we provide acute and elective planned diagnostic services where it makes sense to do so, and redesigning clinical pathways to reduce unnecessary steps or duplication, to contribute to reducing health inequalities, ensuring everyone has the same access to care and the same health outcomes, and deliver a better diagnostic service and a more personalised experience by providing a single point of access to the range of services in the community, and obviously to provide a more joined up care across primary, community and secondary care. The relocation and redevelopment of these services will, I think I'm being heckled, will also benefit the main Denmark Hill campus hospital site by releasing greater capacity for acute bed provision, expanding operating theatres and developing innovative service clusters. As you've heard, the Council granted planning permission for a comprehensive mixed-use redevelopment of this site, and the application is the same as the extant proposals in terms of layout, scale and massing, including the properties facing Valmar Road. The principal difference is the change of use from one block from a hotel accommodation to outpatients and diagnostic facilities and its respective reconfiguration. The 43 residential homes are retained and provide a policy-compliant housing provision of mixed and affordable homes. The change of use from the hotel was supported locally when we were consulted. We've worked closely with your officers and to produce a scheme designed to reflect and enhance and deliver significant benefits to Camberwell and the wider borough, as well as benefits to health outcomes. The proposal will provide additional jobs, significantly increase footfall in Camberwell town centre and lead to wider benefits. We hope you will improve the scheme.
Thank you. I was about to call you to time, but I'll thank you. Any questions from the committee? So, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I just wanted to explore more about the about what you envisage the usage time of the centre to be. When are the operating hours?
Obviously, sadly, it would be a question I'm sure that Eric would be far more able to give than myself, but my understanding is that the hours would be primarily 7 in the morning till 11 at night, but most of the usage after early evening would be staff usage. So obviously, as a major clinical facility and diagnostic facility, there is activity going on beyond the normal working day, but most patient access would be during the normal daily hours that you would expect for clinical and an outpatient facility. And so just to confirm as well, one of the key points for this is that it is an outpatient facility, it is not an acute facility. All appointments, all people that are attending are appointments. So you don't turn up without an appointment.
Thank you.
And is that going to be on weekends as well?
It would be Saturday, some Saturday work, but not on Sundays or bank holidays, obviously. No.
Thank you. Councillor Whittam.
We heard that the objectors think that the building line has been pushed back. Is that true?
In relation, obviously the objectors are on Valmar Road. In relation to Block B, there's been no change at all to the building line or the building heights of Block B in terms of both the ground floor or the upper floors. There's been a change in facade materials, but no change in the building line at all. And just to say, the upper floors of Block B to the upper floors of the Valmar Road properties are 21 metres, which is your council's overlooking distance.
Any further questions for the applicants? No. In that case, thank you very much. If you could return to the public gallery, thank you. Do we have anyone present who lives within 100 metres of the development site that wishes to speak in favour of the application? I don't see anybody that does. Moving on, are there any ward councillors present who wish to speak? I can't see any here. Okay, that brings us on to debate for the committee. So any further questions that people have for the officers following that people want to raise? Oh. Okay, I'm going with Councillor Johnson first.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if any EIA had been conducted either this time round or the previous time round.
So in the report, it refers to the EIA, and it wasn't deemed necessary due to the only being a change of use that was being considered. So no, it hasn't been for this report.
Sorry, had there been one on the extent permission or not?
No, I don't believe so.
No, there wasn't one. There's a number of criteria that we have to go through to screen applications to check whether they would trigger the requirement for an EIA. And in this instance, it wasn't of a scale and magnitude that would have required an environmental impact assessment to be carried out. But we've assessed a wide range of issues in any event, as we've set out in the report.
Councillor Papula.
So the objectors raised a fact with regards to their rights of light, and I just wanted further clarification as to whether that was true or not.
So we've just had a look at the daylight and sunlight reports, and we identified that for 38 Valmar Road, all of the VSC, so the individual windows, would be compliant with daylight and sunlight. However, in terms of the no skyline, for one of the rooms, which is a kitchen, there would be a reduction that was significant. It's deemed when the VSC levels are compliant that we usually appreciate that that's acceptable within the BRE guidance. Within 8 Valmar Road, we saw that there was no identified impacts within the daylight and sunlight report.
And it also says at paragraph 145 of the officer report that the overshadowing to the gardens has been tested as well, and that complies with the BRE guidance.
Any further? If you need to come back, Councillor Papula, please do. Councillor Cumbo.
Thank you, Chair. Let me say that I've worked in public policy for a very long time, and I do understand that consultation does not resolve all objections. I do understand that. But what jumps out at me from the report and from the objections that we've heard, well, it's a question, I suppose, more than an observation. It's whether or not there were opportunities that were missed to look at the objections that were raised both on the previous occasion and in response to the new application. Whether opportunities were missed to revisit some of those concerns. It was very clear from the report that we were essentially being asked to agree with the application on the basis that it was not tremendously different apart from the change of use for one block. But that's quite difficult, particularly for a new committee and for those of us who are new councillors to do. So I think the question I would just ask is whether or not, on reflection, there might have been an opportunity to go back, revisit what the objections were last time, and to see if there were scope to address some of them in the new application.
I'm just going to interject here. What my predecessor would have said at this point is the application is the application is the application, and steer people towards considering the merits of the application in front of us. But given the circumstances and the new committee, I'm going to allow the question.
I'm happy to let it stand as an observation if the question
anybody wants
is
to
not
comment further. Michael.
All that I would say is a very good question, and it is one of those that we always consider when there is a follow-up application. The site is complicated. It's a triangular-shaped site, and the layout of the blocks responds exactly to those limitations and those restrictions. Whilst there's always an opportunity to sort of revisit the design and to say, well, what would we do here if it was a blank canvas? I think the layout would be very, very similar in the sense that it is the most efficient layout of the site and creates optimum public realm and connectivity across the site. So I think that we would have a very similar proposal before us, even if it were let's start again and think about it all over again.
Thank you for indulging the question, Chair.
Any further questions? Are there any comments or anything that the committee would like to say further on this item before we move to the resolution? Councillor Whittam.
Just to say that we did agonise very much over this first time around, especially the provision of a hotel. There was a lot of objection to the provision of a hotel and whether it was necessary in this location. So I think I welcome this change of use to a medical facility to go alongside King's College Hospital and the diagnostics. So I welcome this and will be supporting.
Thank you. Well, in that case, I'm going to move towards the resolutions, which is set out in paragraphs 1 of the report on page 200 of the pack, so paragraphs 1 and 2. So the recommendation is that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and the applicant entering it into an appropriate legal agreement. And paragraph 2 is in the event that the requirements of paragraph 1 are not met by the 1st of October 2022, the Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out in paragraph 226 of this report. Is that motion proposed by anybody? I'm happy to propose it, and Councillor Whittam, I think, has seconded that motion. Can we ask people in turn how they are willing to vote on that? So, Councillor Whittam.
For, Chair.
Councillor Cumbo.
For, Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Leeming.
For, Chair.
Councillor Papula.
For, Chair.
Councillor Roberts.
For, Chair.
Councillor Soanes.
For, Chair.
And I'm Councillor Richard Livingstone, and I'm voting for the motion. So the motion is carried and the application is granted. So